Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today, at long last, I'm going to be trying out a new DCC controller. I thought I would start this video by giving you a brief rundown of my miserable experience of DCC controllers in the past. I think my experiences have been miserable because I went to Hornby to get my controllers. In the early days I thought, you know, Hornby are the biggest manufacturer, they've got a decent reputation, surely a controller from them will work properly and be just the job, right? Well, wrong. The first controller I bought from Hornby was the DCC Select, which was a very inexpensive unit and it worked pretty well. But I guess they didn't properly follow DCC standards because while they worked fine with Hornby decoders, as soon as I put a Bachmann decoder on there, I would have all kinds of problems. I couldn't change addresses, I couldn't change any CVs, acceleration, deceleration. It just didn't work properly. I suspect Hornby fixed this on later revisions of the controller because I reviewed a train set that had a Select in it, and that did work just fine with Bachmann decoders. But that one eventually went haywire. You'd be running your trains on it and it would stop responding. I could change the speed, nothing would happen. I'd have to unplug the controller, all the trains would crash. That's not a good experience in my opinion, and let's just say I don't have that controller anymore. So the second model of controller I got from Hornby was the E-Link, which was a very cool controller that would allow you to run your trains via your PC or in my case a tablet as well. And this one worked well in terms of decoder support. I never had any compatibility issues, but the software was buggy as heck. All sorts of dodgy little software bugs which just got in the way between me and my trains, just not ideal. And also when me and my friend would use the controller together, I'd be on the PC, let's say he'd be on my tablet. Again, suddenly something would go wrong and you'd lose control and you'd either have to unplug it or the trains would crash. Now, in a world where locos can cost over £200, I don't want my trains crashing. So the E-Link is also not a useful system. I don't have that anymore. So for the past year or so, I've not had a DCC controller. And that changes today because I've been recommended this, and this is known as the NCE Power cab. I've heard a lot of good things about it. It's used by a lot of people that I know who say it's great, and most importantly of all, it is not manufactured by Hornby. Now, this is quite a bit more expensive than the Hornby controllers that I've described. The RRP for this is £249.95, and this is kind of the starter set. Although I did get this from Hatton's for an awful lot less. This cost me £168. Not too bad, and actually if you add up all the money I wasted on the Hornby controllers, this thing works out cheaper. So I've not used one of these before, and I've got quite a few expectations for it. First of all, it needs to be reliable. This doesn't seem like much to ask, and I'm sure the manufacturers of this will be laughing when I say this, but it needs to sort of respond. It needs to respond to my controls. It needs to continue working whilever I want it to work. I don't want to have to keep restarting it because I've lost control of my trains. Second of all, it needs to be fairly easy to use and set up. I got really tired of booting up a PC and waiting for the software to load before I could run any trains. Ideally, I could just plug this in when I want it and be ready to go. I want to be able to use functions quite easily, hopefully with just the press of a key. That would be great. And also if I can control multiple locomotives without too much faffing around, that would be great as well. So it doesn't seem like too much to ask. At the end of the day, I just want a DCC controller that I can use and I can rely on. And I'm thinking this is going to be the chap. So let's see what this is like. I've got some affiliate links down in the description if you'd like to give it a go. Let's get this out, see what it's like. So the packaging design might make this look like it's from the 90s or something, but the manufacture date on the box says September of last year. So it is bang up to date, hopefully, and brand new. I'm not entirely sure what I've got in the box here because some of the listings say that the complete starter set comes with a DCC decoder. I didn't see anything like that on the listing I bought this from, and it certainly doesn't mention that on the box. If not, no big deal, I've got plenty of chipped locos. If I show you the end of the box, you can see not an awful lot here. It just says it's the Power Cab UK Complete DCC Starter Set. So yeah, apparently complete. And then if I show you the back of the box, you can see some of the other devices that you can get, and these will pair up to the base power cab unit, I suppose, and allow you to do more with the system. I'm not too bothered about any of this stuff, although of course if you are, then that's something you can look at. Like I say, for me, I just want a DCC system that works. I want to be able to control locos, I want to use their functions reliably, and that's all. So with that, let's get this out and let's see if it's going to do that for me. I think it will, based on everything I've heard. Right, so you can see, look, proof, not had this open yet. Okay, I'm going to need a knife then to break this seal. So this has not been tampered or messed about with then, so that's decent news. And hopefully then we are in. Yes. Right, I guess we want it this way. Let's see. Right, read this and look at the pictures. Yes, Daddy. So this is actually useful for someone like me who's never used one of these before. So you've got the power cab, which is the actual control system. You've got a PCB panel, a power supply, hopefully we've got the UK version, a track wire connector, we've got a 6-wire flat cable, which is, I guess, 7 feet long, and we've also got a 4-wire coiled cord. Put this aside, you'll not use it in power cab mode. Okay, fair enough. And apparently there is also a system reference manual. It says I also need a loco with a DCC decoder installed. That's fine. At least a few pieces of track, a length of wire, yeah, all fine. A small flat blade screwdriver, yep, that's fine. Okay, hook up. Number 1, plug one end of the flat cable into the heel of the power cab. Yep, that seems fine. Plug it all together basically. Pretty straightforward, I would say. Nice. Right, I've got this upside down. Alright, well, first things first, let's have a look at the unit itself. It's quite a bit larger than I was expecting, which is good. You know, you'll be able to get a good grip on this. You've got all your buttons nice and far apart. You're not going to be pressing any by mistake. I guess this is the speed switch. Yeah, and that feels nice, actually. That feels really nice. You've got a decent bit of resistance there. And then you've got just, I guess it's like a dot matrix display. It's obviously not a full colour LCD or anything like that, but you don't need that. I'm hoping that will be okay. And there are no ports or anything on this except for that what looks like an Ethernet connector, although I guess they're not using it for that in this instance. Alright, we've also got the coiled cable, which apparently I can just put to one side. I guess that's if I want to expand it with a different device. Not too sure, but I've got that ready if necessary. We've got a power supply here. Let's pull this out. It does have the UK plug on it, which I guess makes sense. And this is a 13.8 volt, 1.8 amp power supply. So that should do a good few locos, shouldn't it? We've got this connector, which is stuck in the cardboard there. Okay, so that's fair enough. And then we've got this, I guess this is the PCB piece that they mentioned. And this is what connects it all together. I can't see any sort of integrated circuits on this, so I'm guessing all of the logic and the brains are in this piece. This looks like it just connects things together, although I could be wrong. All right. What else do we have in here then? Let's see. All right, so this is the cable we do need. Yeah, it literally just looks like an Ethernet cable, doesn't it? I guess that's what it is. But this is actually what's going to be used to power the hand controller, I guess, and also send the signals to the track. All right. And finally, we have the system reference manual, which is what I'm going to be reading very, very thoroughly next, off camera. I'm going to figure out how I actually use this thing. And then once I've got a pretty good idea, we'll come back and I will hook it up and we'll give it a try, see if I can get some trains going. But I'm glad to see this. There's a lot of information in here. It seems like it explains every corner of the controller, which for someone like me who's never used one before is very, very good to see. So I think that's what I'll do. I'll figure all this out and then I'll come back and we'll give it a go. So the initial setup went exactly as the instructions said it would. You just plug the flat cable into the power cab itself. You plug the other end of it into the left-hand port on the PCB. I then screwed my track wires into the little connector that came with the controller, and once those are in, you can plug that into the PCB as well. And then it's just a case of plugging the power supply into the PCB and you're all good. This little connector is one of mine, and that is the standard connector that I use for all of my tracks so that I can swap between different controllers. Ordinarily, you would just connect this directly to your track. And here we have it. The power cab is all set up. I've got a locomotive on the track. This is a Hornby King class, and I know that this has the standard address, which is just number 3. So for the first time, I'm going to give the power cab some juice. Yeah, and it looks as though the display is coming on. Let's see what we get here. There you go. So that is one of my requirements straight away. I wanted the thing to boot up and be ready to go very, very quickly, and it is. So it's a very simple display that loads in by default. You've got the loco here showing the address, as usual by default, that is number 3. You've got the direction here, which says forwards, and of course using the direction button we can change that between forward and reverse, but I guess I'll leave it on forwards. We've also got a number here, and that represents the speed of the locomotive. Now it's at 0 because the loco's not running, but apparently if I use this speed control, yeah, we start to get a difference in number there. So let's give that a try then. Let's see if this loco is up and running. So you've got a few different ways to alter the speed. You've got the increase and decrease buttons here. By pressing increase, we can increase the speed by 1, and by pushing decrease, we can decrease the speed by 1. You've got ink fast and deck fast, which increases the speed by 4, and if we decrease fast, you will reduce the speed by 4. And then of course you've got the actual speed control, which gives you more control over the actual speed. So let's set this to 3, and sure enough the loco is going. Let's reverse the direction and bring it back, hopefully not crashing. There is also an emergency stop button, oops, which I'd need to press because I derailed the tender, and that will ignore the momentum setting of the locomotive and stop it immediately. And if you just touch the speed control, it will resume, but I need to stop because I don't want it to hit my tripod. Let's change the direction to forward and bring it forwards again. There's also a momentum setting, which previously I've had to access by actually reprogramming the locomotive decoders, but on this one you just hit the momentum button and then you've got a choice between 0 and 9. According to the instructions, if you set this to 0, you will get immediate control. There will be no acceleration or deceleration. It will just set the loco to the speed you choose. If you set it to rate 1, it will take 7 seconds to accelerate, 3 seconds to stop. Let's choose another one. If you pick rate 5, it will take 35 seconds to accelerate, 17 to stop. And at the very highest setting, rate 9, it will take 61 seconds to reach full speed and 30 seconds to stop. So I would say, let's say rate 2 looks the best. So I'm going to key in number 2, and there we go. That should now take effect immediately. Let's try activating some functions then, and according to the instructions this is remarkably simple. You just literally push the button of the function you want and it should happen. So this is a sound fitted loco, so if I push 1 we should get the sound. Wow. And I'll tell you what, the responsiveness there was quite noticeable. Back on the Hornby systems I used to use, particularly the Railmaster software, there would certainly be a second or so's delay before the function actually fired. There it was immediate. Let's try a whistle or something, I guess 3. Yeah. Again, that was immediate. They do seem to toggle, so that whistle is now on according to the controller. If I press it again, that's off. If I want the whistle to come back on, I have to press it again. But again, yeah, the responsiveness there is noticeable. Let's try and do loads of whistles. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. Let's do a few other sounds. So yeah, you literally just push your function button and that goes immediately. That's very, very impressive. Okay, so let's say I now want to change the number of this locomotive. If I want to change its address, let's see if I can do that. Turn the sound off. So as you probably know, number 3 is the default address for any decoder you buy, or at least any that I know, but that's not necessarily too useful if you have more than one locomotive. So for this King class, I'm going to try and change the number to its running number, which is 6006. So for this, I'm going to push the programming button, program on mainline. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to push enter. I'm going to program the loco number 3. The number's already there, so I'm going to push enter for that. I want to change the address, which is number 1, so I'm going to hit number 1. I want to change the long address because it's 4 digits, 6006, so I'm going to push 1. And there we go, I can type in the address, so 6006, push enter, and now the display is showing that I'm controlling loco 6006. Does it still work? Yep. So I'm now controlling this loco as number 6003. Let's give that some juice then. Set it to number 3. Yep, that seems to work very nicely. Let's bring it back into shot then. Yeah, I would say I'm quite happy with that momentum setting as well. That seems to be more or less what I'd like. Let's see if I can be precise with this. Let's set it to forward. Let's just go by one little step. There we go, that's about as slow as this can go. And it wasn't very precise either, but still. Right, so let's get a second DCC loco out then and see how I get on using 2 of them. So now I have a second loco in the equation. I've connected up my second track and put the GG1 from Bachmann on. That's got a Bachmann decoder in it, which is something I'm anxious to try. So at the moment I'm still set to 6006. I have control over the King class, as you can see. So what about if I want to try to control the GG1 instead? So to select a different loco, I will press the select loco button and then type in the number of the other loco. This one's 4913, so 4913, push enter, and now I should have control over the GG1, which I do. But let's say I have set my GG1 in motion and I now want to control the King class again. To go back, I would have to push select loco, type in the King number again, press enter, and then I have control. But this is quite annoying, it's quite a process. So there's actually a function on this controller to make that a little bit quicker, and it's this recall button. So at the moment I can set the King class, let's just say it's stationary and it's got its sound on. Now if I push the recall button, I now have a second profile. So the controller has remembered what my King class is doing, it's remembered the number, and now I have a second profile that I can now put in to control the GG1. So let's push select loco again, let's put 4913 in. There we go, and let's turn the bell on. It's annoying, but that's what it does. And then I can push recall. I'm now back on the King class, the sound is still on. I can get it going. Let's send it off around the track. Off it goes. Let's go fairly quick, set it to about 10. So that's off on its merry way. Let's recall, go back to the GG1. I can now turn that bell off and let's send her off in the opposite direction. But let's not, let's keep it here. So I can blah blah blah, I can control my GG1. Now let's wait for the King to come back. And when it gets here, I'm going to recall back to the King class profile and stop it next to the GG1. Right, it's getting close, so let's push recall. We're now controlling 6006. Let's have a whistle, and let's bring it to a stop. Probably going to overshoot, but you get the picture. And by default, it just does 2 recalls, so I can just switch between these 2 profiles. But if I want to, I can have up to 6, I believe. And there is a setting inside the menus that allows you to do that. But that is just fantastic, isn't it? I mean, let's give this a go. I can turn the sound off. I can make the whistle go on this loco. I can switch to the GG1, make that horn go, and look how quickly I can switch between the 2. That's pretty darn good. I've never been able to quite achieve that before. And it's very, very responsive and it works very well. And just like that, my DCC fitted locos are back in action again. Now to you this might be an awful din, but to me it's like music to my ears, because I haven't been able to use my DCC locos for quite a while, and now I can, which is fantastic. And not only can I use them again, but I can use them in a way that's actually enjoyable, you know, the whole point of the hobby. Yeah, it's no longer faffing and wrestling with technology, it's just nice easy control of locos, which allows you to enjoy the models rather than wonder why they're not behaving as you want them to. So there you go, models up and running again. So there you have it, folks. That was my first day with the NCE Power Cab. And what do I think about it? Well, I think to many of you, particularly those of you who use DCC on a regular basis, you probably won't have seen anything particularly remarkable in this video because it's just a fairly standard DCC controller working as it's supposed to. But for me, this is quite remarkable because it's a DCC controller working as it is supposed to. And my list of requirements for this thing was not very extensive. So let's revisit it and see what this does. Well, mainly I wanted a reliable DCC controller. Well, that is a massive tick for this thing. I've just been running a couple of locos for an extended period of time, and at no point did I lose control because of a glitch or a bug. At no point did I feel like this controller was stopping me from doing something or other that I wanted to do with my engines. From that perspective, it was absolutely perfect. Also, I wanted basic loco and function controls. Obviously, this thing makes that very, very easy. The actual speed controller is really intuitive. You've got the wheel, but then you've also got the buttons so that you can nudge the speed up and down. That's actually quite handy. Not a feature I knew I needed, but one that I'm quite pleased to have. Also, to have access to momentum just with the push of a button is really, really handy. And I also love the recall function because, of course, you can switch between the locos you're running with the push of a button, so that's fantastic. One downside of this controller is that the very, very small screen size limits the amount of data that can be displayed at once. Now, for usual operation, this doesn't matter at all, but if you want to change a specific setting or if you want to find a specific function, it can involve scrolling through pages and pages of different functions and settings, and it's not dreadfully intuitive. But having said that, basic controls, functions, changing the speed and direction, even reprogramming locos, all of that stuff is right underneath your fingertips. So in terms of just using your models on a day-to-day basis, the screen is not going to limit you in doing that. And in fact, the design and the user interface of this is quite clever. I'm actually surprised at how much you can achieve with such a small and basic screen. In terms of the cost, it is quite expensive at the full price, sort of 250 quid. However, I paid £168 for mine, which is still a lot of money. That's still the most I've ever paid for a DCC controller. But this is also the most I've ever gotten for my money when buying a DCC controller, so I'm really quite happy. There's very little that I can fault with this. The quality is good, it's relatively user-friendly, the learning curve is not particularly steep, and of course the instructions go into masses of detail, so if I ever find that I want to do something with this and I don't know how to achieve that, then I can very simply look it up in the instructions and find out exactly what I need to do. So I am very, very happy with this. It is exactly what I wanted and it's left me wanting nothing else really. Yeah, very, very happy with this. So comment down below and let me know what you think of this. Have you got one of these? What do you think of it? Do you use a different system? Let me know if so, and let me know if it has any advantages over this. But if you'd like to pick one up, I can highly recommend it. I've included an affiliate link in the description for you so that you can check it out if you want. For now though, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you very soon. Cheers folks.